Imagine a standard hospital room today. White walls, white floors, plastic gloves, everything new and clean. Before and after surgery, everything is sanitized, which is now considered to be normal. Last year, my dad had surgery on his leg. However, if the surgery had occurred in 1861, he would have only had a 43% chance of survival. During the Civil War, it was a vital distress for soldiers. Failing to use the germ theory caused 66.7% of the deaths in the Civil War, and would still be a major concern for people today if sanitation wasn't utilized.
Applying the germ theory, a revolutionary concept, has permanently reformed the medical field by improving the use of sanitation, which resulted in a drastic decrease in death rate around the world. Medical advancements were created all throughout history. A medical achievement dating all the way back to roughly 2600 BCE was made by an Egyptian man named Imhotep. He diagnosed and discovered treatments for around 200 diseases. In 1489, Leonardo da Vinci began to dissect corpses to understand the anatomy of the human body. In the 1840s, a man named Ignaz Semmelweis worked in a maternity hospital and realized that the death rate was high because the doctors did not wash their hands between patients. His theory was ridiculed and wasn't accepted at the time. However, the most important advancement was the germ theory. The germ theory was used since ancient times, but Western medicine did not practice it until after the Civil War. The main contributors to the theory were Robert Koch, Louis Pasteur, and Joseph Lister. This revolutionary theory was not fully accepted by the surgeons and doctors of Western medicine. Thus, the germ theory was not adopted right away. The germ theory is a concept that saved many lives throughout the world. This theory is the idea that germs exist and that if you are not sanitary, they can be extremely harmful. There are three parts that stand as an underline and basis for the theory. These parts are that microbes can be a source of disease in the body, and microbes and the disease can be spread from one body to another. The third part is that there is a specific microbe for each disease and illness, and that microbes will always cause the same disease. Doctors did not find these pieces logical or correct because they could not fathom the idea of germs, because they are invisible to the human eye. Religion also affected people's thoughts on the germ theory. Christianity had many different beliefs in relation to the germ theory. The Watchtower, a Christian magazine, told views opposing to the germ theory, such as germs were similar to magic. Their whole so-called science grew out of Egyptian black magic and has not lost its demonological character. They should also know the truth about the medical profession, which sprang from the same demon-worshipping shamans as the doctors of divinity. Quote by Shelton, Watchtower journalist. They also believed that germs weren't the issue, but that the uncleanliness of the body was the true problem. Germs are scavengers, and when the filth in the body is removed, the germs have no favored breeding place and are again under control. The whole solution to illness is not killing germs, but avoiding poisons such as aluminum and eating right, which produces a healthy body. The Watchtower taught that diseases were not caused by germs. The germ theory developed over many centuries, but it was not fully established until the 1870s. The first people to ever show hard evidence that bacteria existed was Louis Pasteur, who grew microorganisms in a tube, and Robert Koch, who proved that anthrax was caused by a bacterium. After this, Joseph Lister made the idea more prominent. Even after 100 years of Great Britain and other countries using antiseptic practices, America still had their own sanitation problems, and many people were dying. This was greatly shown throughout the Civil War. Sanitation of medical instruments and hospitals was problematic in the Civil War. After amputations, there were piles of legs and arms 2 stories high, and surgeons and doctors used the same knife for countless patients without sterilizing them in between. Doctors thought that the more blood you had on your apron, the more respected of a doctor you were. Thus, surgeons didn't feel the need to regularly clean their clothing. Hospital operating tables were nothing more than a rubber sheet and were rarely cleaned between operations. To clean instruments, surgeons dipped them in pans of water every few hundred patients. Due to this fact, many patients died from infected blood entering their bloodstream, and 2/3 of all deaths were due to the lack of antiseptics. About the amputating tent lay large piles of human flesh. legs, arms, feet, and hands. They were strewn promiscuously about, often a single one laying under our very feet, white and bloody. We grew callous to the sight of blood. Quote by Nurse Sophronia Buckland. Through this process, infections were spread from person to person, causing even more deaths. Roughly 20,000 people died after amputations in medical war camps. Lung inflammation caused around 20,000 deaths, while diarrhea caused around 34,000 deaths. Diseases were also common in war camps, and they spread fairly quickly. Germ-infested drinking water was the result of latrines and pits of amputated limbs being located too close to the source of water. Ambulances were a problem during the Civil War as well. The U.S. Sanitary Commission Project, or USSC, was a revolutionary group that helped save many Union soldiers' lives during the Civil War. It was led by Henry Whitney Bellows, the president of the commission, Samuel Howe, the director of the Sanitary Commission, and Frederick Law Olmsted, the executive secretary of the commission. The USSC dropped the disease rate in the Civil War by 50%. They did this by improving sanitation, building well-ventilated hospitals, and encouraging women to join new nursing corporations. Also, they put articles in newspapers on how to stay clean in hospitals and army camps. This was a key turning point in U.S. medical history. After the USSC, many people still didn't believe in the germ theory. Some haven't even heard of it. But one event led society to accept the germ theory more. It was called the Sheep Trial, which was conducted by Louis Pasteur between 1876 and 1881. 10 were left alone, and 50 sheep were injected with Bacillus anthracis disease. From the 50 sheep, 25 were vaccinated before the injection with an anthrax vaccine. Out of all the sheep, only the vaccinated survived. These results caused more of the people of Western medicine to trust the germ theory. However, Western medicine did not practice the use of antiseptics until later in the 1880s. Here is a quick summary of how sanitizing instruments improved throughout U.S. history. In the Civil War, when antiseptic practices were not used, your odds of surviving a wound was 7 to 1. By the time of the Korean War, the odds improved to 50 to 1. Today, society has reformed to keep hospitals and medical instruments well sanitized. Almost all hospitals in the world practice the use of antiseptics. The death rate is far less than it was during the Civil War. For example, in the Civil War, around 5,170 soldiers died due to measles in the Union Army alone. Today, less than 1 in 1,000 children die due to measles in a year in developed countries. 2% of Civil War casualty deaths were due to the lack of antiseptics. Today, that would be the equivalent of 6,140,000 people of the world's population dead. 6,140,000 people is slightly less than the population of Idaho, Montana, Wyoming, North Dakota, South Dakota, and Nebraska. These statistics show how sanitation and the use of antiseptics have truly reformed the world.